Now that we're able to save and load our data, let's take a look at some more advanced UI components to help make our editor a little easier to use. We're going to create a reorderable list in order to work with the items in our Save Test editor. Let's go into the editor folder and open up Save Test Editor in MonoDevelop. In order to create a reorderable list, we're going to need to bring in the Unity Editor internal namespace. Let's type out using Unity Editor and select internal from the list. This will give us access to some undocumented components. Even though they're undocumented, we're still able to use them in our custom editor. At the top of our class, we're going to need a reference to store the reorderable list. Let's create a private field typed to reorderable list, and we'll call it list. We're also going to want to save out the save test script. So let's create another private field. We'll type it to save test, and we'll call this save test script. Now let's create a new method for onEnable. This will be private with a return type of void, and we'll call it onEnable. Similar to how our window works, when our editor is enabled, we're going to do some configuration. Here, we're going to start by taking a reference of the save test script. Let's select it from the onInspector GUI, cut it, and paste it into our onEnable. We can delete the word var because we no longer need it. Next, below where we save our test script, let's go ahead and create a new reorderable list. We're going to set the value of list to equal a new reorderable list. Inside of it, we're going to pass a reference to the editor's serialized object. The serialized object represents a serialized version of the game object you're currently editing. In this case, it's going to be a reference to the Save Test class attached to the currently selected game object. We're also going to need to pull a property off of this object. Let's add a comma and try to pull out the items list from the serialized object. We'll start by accessing the serialized object. We'll call the method findProperty, and we're going to pass in a string that says items. This is now going to pull out a serialized list of the items from the Save Test instance. Let's add another component and start adding some other values to the constructor. We're going to pass in true to allow our list to be draggable. We'll pass in true for a header, true for an add button, and true for the remove button. Now let's close the constructor and scroll down to our onInspector GUI. Let's disable the original Draw Default Inspector by commenting it out. This new reorderable list is going to render out all the items on our Save Test. Let's access the reference to our list and call doLayoutList method on it. We'll save our code and go back into Unity. Now select the new sprite editor, and you'll see our new reorderable list. One thing to note though, if you try to add a new item, you'll notice it doesn't work. Let's go back into our code and add the ability for us to save any changes we make to the serialized object. At the end of onInspect GUI, let's access our serialized object, and here we're going to call apply modified properties. We'll save this, go back into Unity, and now when it recompiles, we should be able to hit the plus sign and get a new item. If we click the Load button, navigate to our Assets folder, and import the data, you'll notice that it'll also reset the items as well. Let's go ahead and delete all the items and test out loading it from scratch. Go into the Assets folder, load in our data, and now we have a way to add, remove, and reorder items in our Save Test list.